Richard Smallwood has finally been laid to rest, and his public homegoing service became a major moment for the gospel world. After weeks of anticipation from fans who wanted to know how one of gospel music's most respected composers would be honored, the farewell was officially held as a celebration of life on Saturday, January 24, 2026. The service took place at First Baptist Church of Glenarden International in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and the planning made it clear organizers expected a major turnout. Doors opened at 9:30 a.m. and the service began at 12:00 noon Eastern Time. Funeral arrangements were handled by Precious Memories Funeral Home, and large crowds arrived, showing how widely Smallwood's music impacted choir members, worship leaders, musicians, and everyday listeners across generations. This was not treated like a routine funeral update. It felt like a historic farewell for a man whose songs became permanent parts of worship culture, and the structure of the day reflected a respectful, well-managed service focused on legacy rather than spectacle. After Richard Smallwood's passing, the family initially kept funeral details private, creating public curiosity across the gospel community. People wanted confirmation about where the service would take place and what kind of goodbye would be planned. When the details were finally confirmed, it became clear the family was preparing an organized, dignified farewell shaped around worship, musical excellence, and formal recognition. Attendees came expecting the ceremony to reflect the same standard Smallwood was known for throughout his career, and what unfolded was a homegoing that was both spiritual and professionally executed, built around music instead of extended commentary. The attention around the service was rooted in the depth of Smallwood's legacy, not only because his songs were widely loved, but because they became foundational for church choirs and worship leaders across decades. Church leadership and gospel figures played a central role in guiding the ceremony. Pastor Maurice delivered a tribute message during the service, helping anchor the moment with spiritual direction and acknowledgement of Smallwood's impact. Public reporting also identified Pastor John K. Jenkins Sr. as the host pastor connected to the homegoing. Their involvement reinforced that the service was held under experienced leadership, which mattered because the turnout was large and the event carried major attention. From the start, it was clear the program was not designed for media hype, but for structured remembrance and worship. One of the biggest moments of the homegoing came from Maryland Governor Wes Moore, whose appearance highlighted how far Smallwood's influence reached beyond church spaces. Governor Moore delivered remarks recognizing Smallwood's impact and referenced lyrics from I Love the Lord, a song closely tied to Smallwood's catalog. He then offered a rare and personal tribute by singing a portion of Center of My Joy, something not commonly seen from a public official at a funeral ceremony. He further honored Smallwood by reading an official proclamation during the service, adding another layer of recognition that reflected the respect surrounding Smallwood's legacy. Another major point during the service was the acknowledgement of tributes and condolences from national-level figures, reinforcing how widely respected Smallwood had become. Names mentioned in relation to condolences included Bill and Hillary Clinton, Barack and Michelle Obama, Vice President Kamala Harris, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, and U.S. Senator Angela Alsobrooks. Reports also indicated Senator Alsobrooks met with the family prior to the service. In a news context, it is important to clarify that acknowledgements do not automatically confirm each individual attended in person, but they confirm that recognition was included as part of the farewell. The mention of these names stood out because it showed that Smallwood's influence extended beyond choirs and churches, reaching national recognition in a way that is rare for a gospel composer primarily rooted in worship tradition. The music industry also had representation during the service, with Chelsea Green, chair of the Recording Academy Board of Trustees, acknowledged as part of the ceremony. This detail mattered because the Recording Academy represents major professional music standards, and it reinforced that Smallwood was respected not only spiritually, but musically at a high level. Within gospel music, Smallwood was known for complex and demanding arrangements that required discipline and serious rehearsal from choirs. Industry recognition during his homegoing confirmed that his influence was viewed as a major contribution to music culture overall. The service itself was structured as a music-led farewell, reflecting that music was the foundation of Smallwood's entire legacy. Rather than being driven mainly by speeches, the program was shaped through musical tributes selected to represent the sound and standards he built over decades. Vision with Chris Nelson was among the confirmed participants, and their involvement carried special meaning because Vision represents the organized, polished vocal excellence closely associated with Smallwood's career. Their participation reinforced that the homegoing was designed to honor musical quality, not simply to hold a public event. Throughout the program, the performances reflected the precision expected for someone whose influence shaped choir culture and raised the standards for gospel arrangement. A major highlight came when Dottie Jones performed "I Love the Lord." This tribute carried strong meaning because it is among the most recognized compositions connected to Smallwood's catalog. The song has been sung in churches for decades, and it became even more widely known through Whitney Houston's version in The Preacher's Wife soundtrack. Hearing it performed during the homegoing connected the farewell directly to the work that shaped Smallwood's reputation, reminding attendees why his music mattered beyond entertainment. In gospel culture, songs like this hold personal weight because they are connected to real moments of grief, prayer, and struggle. Total Praise, one of Richard Smallwood's most iconic compositions worldwide, became one of the defining features of the funeral program. The tribute unfolded in two major parts. First, pianist Joseph Joubert performed an instrumental version, creating a reflective moment focused on musical craftsmanship. Instrumental tributes often allow the audience to absorb emotion through sound alone, and Smallwood's compositions have always been recognized for their strong structure. Later, Total Praise returned as a major choir tribute when Vision joined with the Celebration Choir to sing it fully. This performance became one of the biggest musical peaks of the day, uniting performers in tribute to the song most associated with Smallwood's legacy. The Celebration Choir was also notable because it included singers connected with multiple institutions and eras of gospel music, including Metropolitan, Union Temple, and the Howard University Gospel Choir. This showed the choir was built to represent a wider gospel community rather than a single group. In a funeral service honoring someone whose music was performed across churches nationwide, this structure reflected the scale of Smallwood's reach and reinforced that his compositions remained permanent selections across generations. Another confirmed detail was the presence of a string ensemble performing classical selections, including works associated with Bach. This mattered because Smallwood was known for blending classical training with gospel tradition, and many of his arrangements carried an orchestral feel. Including classical music reflected an authentic part of his identity and highlighted the seriousness of his musicianship. The string ensemble served as a tribute to the skill level he brought into gospel music and the way he merged classical structure with worship sound. The service also included a prayer of comfort led by Stephen Hurd, adding a spiritual support element to the homegoing. In a service of this scale, prayer often shifts attention away from public recognition and back to faith, family, and community strength. The prayer of comfort reminded attendees that despite major tributes and national acknowledgments, this was still a moment rooted in grief and spiritual need, reinforcing that Smallwood's work remained centered on worship and church service. Family tributes also brought personal depth to the farewell and balanced the public significance of the event with private grief. Reports confirmed that Smallwood's two foster sisters spoke with appreciation and thanks. His godson referred to him as King David of our time, connecting his musical legacy to the tradition of worship and songwriting. His nephew addressed the audience with a request for prayers for the family. These family remarks grounded the homegoing in reality, reminding everyone that beyond the public legacy, this was still a family saying goodbye to someone they deeply loved. Overall, Richard Smallwood's homegoing was defined by strong organization, high-level musical tribute, and a respectful tone focused on legacy rather than attention. The ceremony was described as song-filled, and the program reflected that through Vision's involvement, major choir tributes, instrumental moments, classical elements, and worship-centered structure. The involvement of church leadership, music industry recognition, and national-level acknowledgments reflected how far Smallwood's impact reached. The January 24, 2026 celebration confirmed what the gospel community has long believed. Richard Smallwood's legacy is measured not only by popularity, but by the way his compositions became permanent standards in choir music and worship tradition, continuing to shape gospel culture long after his final goodbye.